133, first stage ignition to missile.
We are back with the Fox News alert. The United States and North Korea test firing missiles within 10 minutes of each other. What's going on with that?
Well, the Air Force launching an intercontinental ballistic missile from a California base.
Lucas Tomlinson joins us live from the Pentagon with the alarming developments. Lucas, is this a coincidence?
Brian, that's exactly what the Pentagon is saying this morning, that it is a coincidence and the U.S. missile launch long planned. Now, South Korean officials are saying their neighbors to the north launched two short-range missiles, which traveled about 260 and 170 miles, respectively, early this morning from a base about 50 miles northwest of North Korea's capital city. Now, within 10 minutes later, the U.S. Air Force tested a long-range missile, firing an unarmed but nuclear-capable missile, which traveled 4,200 miles from a base in California into the Pacific. The missile successfully re-entered the Earth's atmosphere from space and splashed down near the Marshall Islands. While many focus on missile defense, it's missile offense or deterrence like this, which the Pentagon hopes keeps U.S. adversaries from attacking the United States. The U.S. keeps 400 Minuteman III nuclear missiles underground across 3 bases in the United States. The Air Force released a statement a short time ago, quote, "It's important to note that our test launch is not a response or reaction to world events. The launch calendars are built 3 to 5 years in advance, and planning for each individual launch begins 6 months to a year prior to the launch." Now, the North Korean missile test comes 5 days after a previous test. There were no missile tests by North Korea last year. Missile experts say this new North Korean short-range missile is based on a Russian design. Last week, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un met Vladimir Putin in Russia. Pentagon officials also tell me they're investigating this latest launch, but cannot confirm the details. Guys?
Right. Thanks, Lucas, for the live report from the Pentagon. Let's bring in Hawaii Congresswoman from the 2nd District, Tulsi Gabbard. She's running for President of the United States. She's from Hawaii. Good morning. Aloha.
Good morning and aloha.
Thank you very much. So what do you make, Congresswoman, about this? The Pentagon says it's a coincidence that we fired ours off 10 minutes later. But nonetheless, North Korea, the second missile launch in less than a week.
Well, obviously, we need to make sure that our capabilities are where they need to be. I think what North Korea is doing only highlights further the need for us to continue to pursue diplomatic negotiations to ultimately denuclearize the Korean Peninsula.
They've shown no interest in doing it, though.
Well, the negotiations that have already happened, I think, are steps in the right direction. I think we've got to look at our policies and see how can we help further push these negotiations forward. I'll tell you, my constituents in Hawaii have felt very directly this nuclear threat coming from North Korea. You'll remember about a year ago, there was a false missile alert that came through across people's phones, over 1 million phones across our state, saying, "Missile incoming, seek shelter immediately. This is not a drill." And it was terrifying. Right. It was terrifying with people looking, where do you take shelter? Where do you go? Where can you find protection? The fact is, there is no shelter. And that's why it's so important for us to continue to work to denuclearize the Korean Peninsula, continue to work to end the regime change wars that further undermine our ability to create this deal with North Korea, because we know that Kim Jong-un has said, if I look to the United States and how they've taken out leaders like Gaddafi in Libya, for example, where the United States said, hey, look, if you give up your nuclear weapons program, we will not come in and take you out. That's exactly what happened, though. We went in and took out Gaddafi, and so Kim Jong-un is seeing their nuclear weapons program as their only deterrent against regime change.
Well, you've had quite a career. We're all proud of you. Women across the country are especially. You're the first woman combat veteran to run for president. That's really amazing. You're running on the Democratic side, and you're running against a lot of people. So how do you plan to resonate? How do you think you can get your message across and possibly beat a Joe Biden, who has 46% of the votes in one of the polls, in one of the latest polls, the Hill-Harris poll?
Look, we're taking our message directly to the people of this country. You know, polls have been proven to be wrong in previous elections, as you know.
Right.
So I'm really appreciating the opportunity to get out and to talk with voters directly, to introduce myself to them, let them know about my experience serving as a soldier for over 16 years in the Army National Guard, of deploying twice to the Middle East, of serving in Congress for over 6 years on the Foreign Affairs and the Armed Services committees, and to let them know, I'm running for president to bring those soldiers' values of honor and respect and integrity to the White House, and to serve their interests first and foremost, not the interests of a political party or self-serving politicians or corporations or other countries, to actually put the interests of the American people first.
Congresswoman, so a couple of things. Joe Biden is about a week ago kind of laughed at people who said that China is a foe, is an enemy, is a challenge. They said he kind of laughed at people who thought they were a threat. How do you view China?
Well, look, obviously there are areas of concern and differences that we need to address with China, both as it relates to trade as well as security. But I think it's important that we be able to address those challenges while not escalating tensions to a very dangerous point, which is where I'm concerned about now, when we have rising tensions with nuclear-armed countries like Russia and China. This is bringing us closer to the risk of nuclear catastrophe, something that is undermining our own national security,
but it's
as well as
actions,
the safety of the world.
But it's their actions, not our actions, that are causing us to respond.
Well, we're the leaders in this world, and we've got to set that example to reach out, to be able to work out those differences, but also recognize, for example, with China, there is areas where we need to be able to work together, for example, on denuclearizing North Korea. China and North Korea are strong allies. I think China shares our objective of ultimately denuclearizing the Korean Peninsula. They want to see stability there. So this is an area where we've got to be able to work together.
Well, the administration is negotiating with China right now regarding the tariffs. Midnight tonight is when big tariffs could go into effect with the United States. But I wanted to ask you, Congresswoman, about the fact that as you're running for president, if you were the nominee, you would be running against Donald Trump's economy. And you've heard the metrics. Unemployment is at 50 years lows. People, for the most part, if you want a job, there is a job waiting for you out there. It seems to many economists like they call it the Goldilocks economy, where, it's not too hot, not too cold, it's just about right. How do you run against that? How do you convince Americans you would be better off with me as chief executive than Donald Trump?
Oh, look, I think if you look at those numbers, they are positive, and we are moving in the right direction. But I think we also have to address the fact that there are still so many people in this country who are working sometimes two or three jobs just to be able to make ends meet. We've got to look at the quality of life that people have in this country.
How do you fix
that? The fact that so many people still are not able to get the health care that they need. So many people are still not able to afford to put a roof over their heads. Obviously, I come from a state that has a high cost of living, but there are many communities, both in urban cities and in rural communities, who are struggling with basic necessities. So ultimately, there are many different challenges that we need to address. What I'm bringing to the American people as President and Commander-in-Chief is to put their interests first. When you look at what's happening in Washington, what people are seeing is frustration because their needs are not being met. Those results are not being delivered for them, for their families, and for their future. That's what I seek to change.
Congresswoman, let's talk about immigration, because that's near and dear to so many Americans' hearts. It is heart-wrenching to watch the video of the kids and the parents. We know they're coming here for a better life, but most Americans, or many Americans, would say they need to do it the right way. If you look at the numbers, they're staggering. Already in the first 7 months of this fiscal year, we've hit more apprehensions and turn away individuals than we did last year in the whole year. Just last month, the new numbers were reported. More than 109,000 were apprehended and turned away at our southern border. Do you call this a crisis, and what do you plan to do about it?
Yeah, it is a crisis, and I think there's a few things that need to happen. One is there's still a lack of resources being sent there to deal with the large numbers of people who are seeking asylum or trying to come across our borders. That extreme shortage of resources continues to be a problem. I think we've also got to recognize that, as you say, for people to come into our country legally, our legal immigration system is vastly outdated and broken. I was talking to a friend of mine here who is an immigrant, who came here when he was a college student, now runs a very successful business. his sister and their family. It's taken 15 years for them to get the appropriate visa to be able to immigrate to this country through the legal process. So when you look at small business owners, entrepreneurs, there are a number of areas in our immigration system that are vastly broken and ultimately end up hurting our economy and those who are contributing.
And your friend that waits 15 years, how fair is it to that friend of yours that people can just walk across the border and beat the entire system? So that's what it should be compared to. Congresswoman, thanks so much. Best of luck the rest of the way.
Thanks.
And congratulations on qualifying for both the debates.
Yes, we look forward to watching you. Thank you so much. Come on anytime.
Aloha. Thank
Aloha.
you.
Indeed.
Okay, speaking of the economy.